This episode is brought to you by Audi. The road is calling. Embrace the thrill of the drive with the all-new, fully electric Audi Q6 e-tron. Featuring effortless power, serious acceleration, and advanced Audi tech. It's not just a new EV, it's a new way to experience driving. The all-new, fully electric Audi Q6 e-tron is here. The next chapter of Audi starts now.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile with a message for everyone paying big wireless way too much. Please, for the love of everything good in this world, stop. With Mint, you can get premium wireless for just $15 a month. Of course, if you enjoy overpaying, no judgments, but that's weird. Okay, one judgment. Anyway, give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
This message comes from Greenlight. Ready to start talking to your kids about financial literacy? Meet Greenlight, the debit card and money app that teaches kids and teens how to earn, save, spend wisely, and invest with your guardrails in place. With Greenlight, you can send money to kids quickly, set up chores, automate allowance, and keep an eye on your kids' spending with real-time notifications. Join millions of parents and kids building healthy financial habits together on Greenlight. Get started risk-free at greenlight.com/Spotify.
Hello and welcome to The Price of Football, the show that looks at the money behind the beautiful game with me, Kevin Day, and Liverpool University's Kieran Maguire. How are you, Kieran? You okay?
Well, it's been a stressful weekend.
Yeah,
it has to be said.
Good. I mean, I'm sorry to hear that. Sorry. Yeah.
And the reason for that is our granddaughters came to stay with us, and school's just broken up for holiday.
Oh.
And Violet, who's our eldest, she was given responsibility for the school ducklings over Easter. Yeah.
No.
So we had four ducklings. Who are, of course, absolutely gorgeous. They're only a couple of weeks old. But you just feel this incredible sense of responsibility. You know, what happens if something happens? Now, fortunately, over the course of the weekend, when to be fair to Finley, because he's a gun dog. He's a gun dog who sets. He watches things. So he kept guard on them, and he made sure that nothing untoward happened to them. He was giving them sort of a bit of a stare at times, and they didn't seem particularly bothered by him. But yes, the good news is that despite those stresses, nothing else happened over the weekend, so we managed to survive.
You say Finley was setting watch on them, giving them that's a stare that says, as soon as that bloke leaves the room, one of you. I love the fact that you're so chippy. You think Finley was actually keeping an eye on him. It's a lovely image of the four ducklings. I mean, you say gorgeous, Kieran. Other people would say delicious. But I kind of think somebody needs to have a word of yours with Violet School, saying, "All right, who's going to look after the ducklings? It needs to be a house with no dogs, preferably." Yeah, we'll take them. It was lovely to see you on Saturday, Kieran, in the Porters.
Likewise, yes.
If you need anything to console yourself with, Kieran, I think you should probably console yourself with the fact that Lewis Dunk is heading towards becoming one of the best referees in the Premier League. He's a cracker. If only we could do something about the idiot who actually refereed the game, we'd all be fine. But Lewis Dunk, what a good referee. Also, I'm still slightly sulking, Kieran. Princess Julian found this hilarious when a little chap, Palace fan as well, came rushing over to you to say, "Oh my God, it's Kieran Maguire. I love the pod. It's fantastic. You answered one of my questions. I'd never..." And Princess Julian actually said, "Well, Kevin's here as well." And he just looked me up and down, the way that Finley looks ducklings up and down, I imagine. And then just carried on fanboying you. And it's like, all right, okay. You won't be laughing so much when Justin Morehouse is hosting it. It's questions that, I'll tell you what, Kieran, I think today we have got some of the best questions we get. All our questions are great, and they always throw up something of interest. But we've got some really interesting questions today, Kieran. So let's crack straight on. And also, that was a penalty. It was not a dive. That's the last time I mentioned it. Jeff Carr, Kieran. Jeff Carr has our first question. And Jeff Carr says, last year the Chancellor decided to remove non-domicile status for foreign residents in the UK and tax their worldwide earnings. How does this have an impact on the tax position of high-earning Premier League footballers? And what do you think may be the impact on the Premier League's costs and ability to recruit the world's best footballers? It's very interesting to see Nigel Farage complain about high-earning foreign people having to leave the country, and most of his audience applauding the idea that foreign people have to leave the country. But it's an interesting. Given the amount of money in Premier League football, especially, Kieran, what sort of impact would it have?
Well, I spoke to our secret tax advisor, and he or she said for new arrivals into the UK, this is quite technical, their first 4 years of residence in the UK makes them eligible for 100% relief on their foreign income and gains, provided they've not been UK residents in the 10 years prior to arrival. So effectively, it's saying, come to the UK, come here for 4 years, you'll get taxed on what you earn in England and not any money from elsewhere. So that shouldn't be too much of many players come and go. So for any new players, there's still this relief available. For players who've been resident in the UK and previously relied on non-domicile status, they are now taxed on their worldwide income, and they will pay UK tax on things like foreign image rights and other overseas income streams. So it could be said they've got some rental income and so on. They're also at risk at being liable for UK inheritance tax. So I don't, presumably that shouldn't be an issue in the short term. They went on to say, I would imagine that from a player's point of view, they would still want the same net pay that they would have had before. So this could involve wages for footballers increasing, perhaps spending large chunks of time outside of the UK to try to avoid residence, and obviously being attracted to other countries where there is a flat foreign income tax, such as Italy and Spain, where the flat rate is up for 6 years for foreign workers. So that's that could have a hit. We know that the Premier League is in competition with other leagues. I would, however, say that let's be honest about this. If we take a look at the clubs that we support, we can outbid everybody apart from those clubs who are qualifying from the Champions League on a regular basis. Such is the strength of the Premier League that the middle classes of the Premier League are far bigger than the middle classes of Italy, Germany, and so on. Even taking into account these changes in the tax rules, the ability to pay the sort of 60 to 70 grand a week, which tends to be the going rate at clubs at that level, is far in excess of what you could expect to earn for a mid-ranking team in La Liga or the Bundesliga or so on. But I think for the elite players, tax has always tended to be an issue. And we remember the Beckham tax, which was introduced, I think, in Spain quite a few years ago. It would be something which would be taken into consideration during negotiations, and it could be that players' representatives will look to extract more money from deals, because they'll say, I think Ruud Gullit wasn't he famously, Ken Bates would say all that he cares about is the netto.
Yeah. Does this mean, Kieran, you could see a situation in where overseas players who expect only to be here for 3 or 4 seasons could had to be paid more than homegrown players?
I think from I was about to name our secret tax advisor there, but I think from the information we've been given, if you're here for no more than 4 years, makes no difference. If you've been here for a few years, right, okay, and your contract's up for renewal, you might be wanting to take some appropriate tax advice to see whether or not it's worth renewing a contract, or whether you need to have some more intricate tax planning, or, of course, to get a decent pay rise to offset the higher taxes.
Our next question, Kieran, comes from James S. And it's an interesting one in the context of the interview we've done this week with Joe Foster from Birdo Glimt, talking about the positive aspects of European football for that club. And James S. says, given the change in the Champions League format and the extra money it will bring to the teams participating, I was wondering how much more beneficial it would be for clubs who don't typically qualify for the Champions League, such as Villa, Brest or Stuttgart, to qualify for the 24-25 competition rather than the 23-24 competition. In other words, as the Swiss model, giving them more money, Kieran, the Champions League sides.
Yes, a bit like I would imagine in comedy, timing is really important as far as qualification for these competitions is concerned. So because you are guaranteed 4 home matches, and remember, if we take a look at both the Champions League and the Europa League, there are then playoffs for the sort of between clubs finishing 9th and 24th. So you've got a more than a 50% chance of, or a 50% chance, we say, of an additional home match from the playoffs. That's 2 home games, so that's 2 sets of gate receipts. So for a club like Villa, they'd be probably looking to make £2 million from a home match. So that's an extra 4. The overall prize money has increased. This is partly due to the fact that UEFA are aware that there are still mutterings about the alternative, a franchise competition run by A22 on behalf of Real Madrid and Barcelona. So therefore, at the elite end, the entry fee is up. You're probably getting around about £30 million. So everything has increased, not necessarily due to the Swiss model. Partly it's a defensive procedure to counteract the Super League. But the additional fixtures will be adding that extra money. You get extra money from your sponsors as well. So I would imagine for a club like Villa, they'll probably have made an extra 10 to 15 million pounds. And I'll be wishing them, got all the best to proceed through the tournament. I remember, you and I both remember Peter with Tony Morley. In the European Cup. And in those days, you always wanted the domestic team to do well in the European competitions. That appears to have been diluted over time. But yeah, I'll be hoping Villa make progress.
That's an interesting point, that, Kieran, and it's one for another pod, actually. I was at the Comedy Store recently, funnily enough, talking to the other acts, all of whom are big football fans. And we were talking about that notion, as I mentioned, because my dad, for example, would always support the next local, even if it was Millwall. If Millwall were playing a northern club in the FA Cup, he'd want Millwall to win, which is baffling to the rest of the house. But, and in Europe, you did tend to want the domestic clubs to win the tournaments, and we were wondering why that would be, and why that's changed now. And the only thing we could come up with is that most clubs now have so few actual domestic players in them that you don't really, if you're an Arsenal fan and Nottingham Forest are in Europe and 11 of the Forest players aren't from anywhere near Nottingham or England, you're not that fussed. So that was the only reason but it does seem to have changed, because you certainly did back in the day. You wanted Forest, Villa to win those tournaments as much as you would have wanted your own club to win. I did think for a moment, Kieran, you were about to wish Villa all the best in the FA Cup semi-final, but you're a bigger man than that, Kieran, I think, quite clearly. Still can't believe it. He just looked at me up and down, that bloke. It was literally as if to say anyone could host it, that only this genius can answer the questions. Right. I feel like saying to him, mate, I will be seeing you at the next home game when Kieran's when Kieran's not here. See how brave you are when Kieran's not here. And it's just me and Princess Julian. Matt Whittle has a great question, Kieran. You know how much I love questions which make you think, hang on a second, why on earth have we not answered this before? And it's so simple. Matt Whittle said, is paternity leave considered in players' contracts? It would be considered odd not to take paternity in most professions, but I can't recall hearing about a player being on paternity leave. And of course there are statutory requirements for men who want to take paternity leave. I guess, of course, in women's football, I don't know whether outside the statutory requirements, Kieran, there are other things added in contracts, but it's a great question.
Yes. I contacted one of our secret agents Whenever I say that, I always get the James Bond theme music going through the back of my head. And as always, we're very grateful to our legion of supporters at various parts of the industry to assist it. And the reply was, paternity leave is not included in the standard FA contract that's used throughout all professional clubs in England. However, there is a legal requirement that should a player request it, then it is indeed granted. Not one player has done this as far as I'm aware. The sad thing about football is that staff really don't take advantages of such opportunities over fear of ridicule or losing their jobs.
Oh, that's worrying. But you do hear there was a Premier League game a couple of weeks ago where a player was absent because he wanted to be at the birth of his child. I think, and it happened to Phil Foden as well last season, I think, and no one would take that's rather.
Well, paternity leave. I mean, I think being at the birth of your child is one thing. Paternity leave is sort of a period of time.
Yes, of course, I suppose. But it's quite sad to hear, Kieran, isn't it? They don't want to invite ridicule or run the risk of losing. I mean, legally, surely they can't run the risk of losing their jobs because there is a statutory requirement to allow a degree of paternity leave. So it's rather sad to hear that. I mean, it makes football sound much more macho than you hoped it would still be at this.
It is, but it's a squad is a incredibly competitive environment.
I suppose so. Yeah,
you're away. You're helping your partner in those first few weeks, which, as any parent will tell, you can go to all of the classes, you can look at all of the YouTube videos, you can read all of the books. Nothing can quite prepare you for being a new parent. And I guess the fear of losing your place to another player, also the fear of the manager seeing their arse and saying, if you're going to put your family ahead of... because the manager's main concern is their own career. We know how precarious a job is in terms of football, and therefore they might say, well, if you're putting your family first, don't expect me to give you any favours in terms of getting your place back. And players, they want to play football. Their pay packets or their contracts are very incentivized towards participation and success, so there are financial repercussions as well.
When you think about super successful businesses that are selling through the roof like Heinz or Mattel, you think about a great product, a cool brand, and brilliant marketing. But there's a secret. The business behind the business making selling simple for them and buying simple for their customers. For millions of businesses, that business is Shopify. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout as Heinz and Mattel. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/promo, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/promo to upgrade your selling today. Shopify.com/promo.
This episode is brought to you by Amazon Business. How can you free up your team from time-consuming office tasks? Amazon Business empowers leaders to not only streamline purchasing, but better support their teams so they can focus on strategy and growth. Free up your teams and focus on your future. Learn more about the technology, insights, and support available at amazonbusiness.com.
Our next question, Kieran, comes from Sam Tubby. And much as I love Producer Guy, I can't help but feel there may be a typing error on his part here. Unless it's Tubby Sam, I don't know. But if Sam Tubby wants to get in touch, I'd love to know where his surname comes from, because I'm fascinated by that sort of thing. But Sam Tubby says, when a new manager comes into a club and brings their own coaching team with them, who decides their salaries? Do clubs give managers a budget to split between the staff? So when Brighton, inevitably, Kieran, when they lose another 3 games and they bring somebody else in, and I'm sure they've got worked out for their 3-year, 5-year, 10-year plan, when that new manager comes into to Brighton and brings their own coaching team with them, who decides how much they get?
Ultimately, it is the employer, it is the club. The club will have discussions. Normally, when you're interviewing a manager, you will say, this is what we are prepared to offer you. Do you want some of your colleagues that you've worked with before to join you? To which the answer tends to be yes, because as you always say, that there's three elements to working with somebody. Do I like you? Do I trust you? Can you do the job? Or if you are the manager, do you want to be working with coaches who you've never met, who you might not get on with? You're not sure whether their philosophy is in line with you. All of that takes time to resolve. So therefore, you tend to acquire both the manager and the entourage. The acquiring club will have an overall budget that they will set. They might say to the incoming manager, look, this is what we're intending to pay in terms of the overall financial commitment. Do you think that would be acceptable? And we're not prepared to go any further. And if you want some of those people to pay more, then it could be that you have to make a sacrifice yourself. So there's a budget for everything, and I think it will be a process of negotiation. Certainly, somebody coming to the Premier League is likely to get a step up in wages unless it's from one of the elite clubs.
I do like that idea of the manager being given a budget to split between his staff, because I don't think the manager would particularly want to be the one who decided that, would he?
No. I think he'd say, look, person X is, I've got a rough idea of what they're on, but everybody has their own priorities, and also the manager themselves will have a priority. You will want your assistant, you will want your conditioning coach, or whatever these people are going to be. And you say, well, these are we always talk about desirables and essentials, and you might do that in terms of the staff that you're bringing with you.
Yeah, and I have to say, Kieran, well done for not biting on the fact that I made that theoretical question about Brighton bringing a new management team. It was very good, well done. A little bit disappointed, but you didn't. You just rose above it, which is very good. It's sort of
the Mavis Riley element of our fan base have probably already sacked him, and not found a replacement, because that would involve a bit of forethought. But yes, there's been various
Oh, we know.
Hysterical behaviour from the usual suspects.
The fans may not have any forethought, Kieran, but we know the club has. We know they've got a plan for every single thing. I'll tell you what, Brighton. This is a little bit of advice you can have for nothing, Kieran. You did it once in the first half. Every now and again, you could stop just knocking it around to each other in the centre circle area. Just because see what happened when you suddenly went, oh, well, what's that big old thing with the net and sticks at the other end? Let's head. Every time you did decide to head towards that, you caused a bit of chaos. But the rest of the time, we all just sat and chatted amongst each other and waited for us to get the ball back. What's the duckling situation like?
They're fine. They're fine.
Okay?
They can't go in the water yet.
Oh, okay.
And they're on loan from a farm. So we have had private discussions as to how do we deal with that particular issue. Should we adopt them? But then where do they live? There's so much going on in the world of ducklings that you don't realise until you have four of them for the weekend.
Do you know what? You're probably quite right, kid. I think most of us are probably quite happy in the lack of duckling knowledge. Although, just for me, Kieran, if you could say to the Baroness later on, do you like duckling? Just to see whether she says, I don't know, I've never duckled. That would be. It's been killing me, the fact I didn't say that earlier on, Kieran. It's just, I thought I'd be too mature, but it's actually the universe has just been prodding me with a pen, saying if you don't do the duckle joke, you ain't sleeping tonight. Jack Parkinson, that's a proper solid captain of Bolton Wanderers in the 1950s name, isn't it? Jack Parkinson's great name, and a really interesting question as well, Kieran. Jack Parkinson says, I have a question about Berwick Rangers. Now, everyone knows, of course, the men's team are a side based in England that play in Scotland, but the women's team play in the Northumberland League in England. Does having one team playing in Scotland and one in England have any positive or negative financial aspects? For example, can they get funds from both the FA and the SFA, or do they need to pay into both? And I suppose as well, Kieran, if the profit and sustainability rules are very different either side of the border, it might prevent Berwick Rangers buying their own women's football team, Kieran, or selling it. Who knows?
Yeah, I think this is a absolutely fascinating question from Jack. I don't think there are any financial disadvantages. And the reason why I say that is if there were, you would have expected Berwick Rangers to potentially play both teams in the same jurisdiction. But just as we know from our slightly less elevated positions in the world of football, you've got to go and pay your match subs to the league. And there's always somebody at the club who says, "Oh yeah, you got at the start of the season you've got to pay your registration fee," and you were never certain whether that registration fee actually was genuine and went to the local Sunday league or not, or whether it was just going into somebody's holiday fund. But you want to play, you had to pay. But normally there is a registration fee from individual leagues for players to have their contracts registered and so on. It could be that they are higher in the Women's Scottish League or lower in Women's Scottish League than they are in England, and therefore it could be financially beneficial. But I think the sums that we're talking about are very, very marginal. So if I was Berwick Rangers, I would be marketing the fact that we're the only club in football that are playing in two countries at the same time. And I think that could be a unique selling point. But there's no financial disadvantage in taking that approach.
It would be interesting to find out, Kieran, and maybe if anybody from Berwick is listening, they could tell us, because obviously the women's team would have been set up much more recently than the men's team, so it's clearly a decision they deliberately made, I presume, to play in the Northumberland League. So it might be reasons for travel or transport.
I think it would be driven by geography as much as anything else. If you take a look at the distances that Berwick Rangers men's team have to go, I think people in England don't realise just how big Scotland is. So therefore, to expect the women's team to have to do similar, it simply wouldn't make sense. So to have them in the Northumberland League, where you've got a relatively small geographical radius, makes far more sense from the position where the club is at present.
Well, also, how fascinating to hear Joe Foster of our interview from Burdo Glimt to say that the region of Norway that they are in is the size of everything in England north of Birmingham, but with a population of only 200,000 people.
Yes.
Incredible.
Yeah, and that shows what can be done where everybody is rowing the boat in the same direction.
Yeah. He used that analogy as well, because that's the second time in a week that somebody's used that. Kieran. The ducklings, bananas, rowing boats. This pod's getting out of control. Peter
no chance.
That's funny. Peter Flynn has our penultimate question. Again, it's another interesting one. Peter says, when pondering on why profit and sustainability rules are unconcerned with Premier League clubs having huge long-standing debts, the question of what a loss actually is quickly became hard to answer. Can you shed some light on what an accounting loss is and why losses are bad but debt is okay?
Right, Peter. An accounting profit or loss is the difference between your revenues and your costs. Now, as far as football is concerned, your revenues are ticket sales, your broadcasting deal, your commercial deal, and I think we've got to be honest, including profits from player sales as well, and possibly other weird and wonderful things. That's known as doing a Chelsea. You add those together, and then you subtract from those your running costs. Your running costs mainly will be player-based in the form of wages. We've got to have very good friend amortization. Then we've got our general day-to-day overheads, the cost of pitch maintenance, ground maintenance, insurance, admin, marketing, and so on. So none of that involves any debt. Now, debt is simply where you borrow money, you physically receive cash, and you invest that cash in either infrastructure, subsidizing the losses, or your playing budget. So when clubs borrow money, all that they do is that they increase two things. First of all, they increase the cash, and secondly, they increase what they owe to somebody else. That doesn't come within any of our remit of revenues or costs. However, if it is a commercial loan, you'll be paying interest on that debt, and therefore that does impact upon your PSR calculation. If the loan is from the owner, some owners, not all owners, then that loan could be interest-free, which historically meant that there was nothing going into your PSR calculation. But as we know from the ongoing associated party transactions case between Manchester City and the Premier League, for which we are currently awaiting an outcome, that could be quite seismic and cause yet more repercussions. So the reason why debt is okay is, especially if it's owner debt, there are no expenses attached to it. It's the same as if I get an interest-free mortgage from my bank, that's great, because it's not cost me, especially if it's an interest-free mortgage which I don't have to repay, for say 10 years, 25 years, or sometimes we refer to as a bullet loan. And in the case of practically all debt obtained by football clubs, if we take a look at the borrowings of Manchester United, for example, their debt's not due to be repaid until 2027. If we take a look at the debts of Spurs, they're not due to be repaid until 2037 and 2039. There's no cash implications for that apart from the interest. So debt, and I've always said, and I think I absolutely understand where Manchester United fans are so angry towards the Glazers. For me, the debt was never the issue. It was the fact that at the inception of the loan, when the markets, especially the debt markets, were very suspicious about the Glazers in terms of their ambitions, Manchester United were paying exorbitant rates of interest, and they were paying interest of up to £100 million a year. So it's the interest on the debt that's an issue. Debt in itself is not a problem, provided you've got the cash flow to repay it as it falls due, and that's why it has no implications for PSR.
Can I ask what a bullet loan is? Why is it called that, Kieran?
I don't know what it's called. A bullet loan it's the equivalent of an interest-only mortgage.
Right. Oh, I see. Okay.
You're fine until I've got a 10-year interest-only mortgage, but which matures in 2035. I'm paying interest, and so you think about a traditional. When we've probably bought our first houses, we just simply go and pay a certain amount to the bank or the building society every month. And that included a repayment. Let's say you borrowed 100 grand. It will be an element of that 100 grand was being repaid each month, plus an element of interest. An interest-only mortgage, of course, your repayments are less, but you're actually storing up a problem if you're not putting money aside for that ultimate repayment.
At Capella University, you can learn at your own pace with our FlexPath learning format. Take 1 or 2 courses at a time and complete as many as you can in a 12-week billing session. With FlexPath, you can even finish the bachelor's degree you started in 22 months for $20,000. A different future is closer than you think with Capella University. Learn more at capella.edu. Fastest 25% of students. Cost varies by pace, transfer credits, and other factors. Fees apply.
Uh-oh. The last cookie.
You can get a new box of cookies in as fast as an hour with Walmart Express Delivery.
Are you my guilty self-conscience?
No, I'm the voice offering you promo code EXPRESS for free delivery on your first order.
Hey, who ate my cookies?
You mean, these cookies?
Order now. Welcome to your Walmart. Promotion valid for first express delivery order. $50 minimum subject to availability. Restrictions apply.
Our final question, Kieran, comes from our old friend Stuart Hatcher. And Stuart says, given the recent success of Dear England and Welcome to Wrexham, and going back to the days of One Night in Turin, it made me wonder what's been the most successful play, film or documentary about football in financial terms. And in brackets, I don't know why Stuart's done this. He's put escape to victory. I'm not going to count. Well, I'm not sure there, Stuart. It's like whether is Die Hard a Christmas film? No. I should point out. Can I just say two things here, Kieran? For some of our overseas listeners who may not know, Dear England is a fantastic play. It's back at the National Theatre after a very successful run there last year. It's about Gareth Southgate and his time at England. It's a very good piece of drama. The thing that annoyed me most about it, though, was that there are rather patronising signs all over the National Theatre saying, if you're a football fan, this might be your first time in a theatre, so why not come back and see another play? And the answer to that is because your cheapest tickets are 75 quid. That's why.
Yes.
I got chatting to some people in the bar. I'd never been to the theatre before, just going, we've been moaning about away prices for the last 5 years, and now they're asking us to come back and see another play. And I was trying to explain to him how brilliant Shakespeare is, and he's got to be more than brilliant for 75 quid, mate. It's like, yeah, you can get offers, but also, if anybody out there is thinking of making a football film, or a football documentary, a football drama, for the love of God, get some actors in who can play football, or pay the BBC a bit of money for, like, The Damned United, which is a great film about Brian Clough, except for the bits when clearly overweight actors who are 20 years older than the footballers they're meant to be portraying. Like the lad playing Billy Brenner looked like it's clear. Yes. It's quite obviously not the county ground, and it turns out to be a disused sports stadium in Darlington with a load of extras clearly not been. They almost had to do like the Thunderbirds close-up and put somebody else's human foot in to kick the ball. But it's an interesting question, Kieran. Also begs the question, which again is for another podcast, is why you don't really see more dramas, plays, comedies about football. But could you come up with an answer?
Yes, I have had a look at this. Based on my analysis, the most successful, and you might red card me on this, the most successful football film is Bend It Like Beckham.
Ah, okay.
Which was what 2002.
Yeah,
that grossed, I think, 74 million.
Wow,
very successful.
Yeah.
The most successful documentary series, by far, is Welcome to Wrexham. It's been fantastic news as far as Netflix is concerned. I think the least successful film relating to football is Ronaldo. Which grossed a grand total of both domestic and international box office takings of $290,000.
Oh, that's not good.
That is not good. So yeah, that one copped a huge loss. That was up with, wasn't it a Danny Dyer film, Run for Your Wife, or something like that, a few years ago, where I think 7 people in the country watched it on its week of release. It's up there in terms of great turkeys of our time.
I'm not going to say anything, but I actually genuinely, Danny Dyer is actually one of the nicest people you could meet. But that was still hilarious. Even as I'm sure he gets reminded of it every now and again. When he's down the old West Ham. There's more people in this bar than watched your film, Danny. I
like Danny Dyer. I've seen him on some of the chat shows. I think he's fantastic.
Do you know what? I with him, I wrote when he did the alternative Queen speech on Channel 4. He and I wrote it together. He's a genuinely nice bloke who knows exactly what his role is in life and has no pretensions to anything. He's very good, and he's very warm and generous with people who come up and talk to him and ask for selfies, which is one of the things I always judge people on. And he's actually, Harold Pinter is his idol, so he's actually more of a deep thinker about other people's acting rather than his own, let's be fair. But he's all right. He's a good lad. Thank you to everyone. Good. He's a good lad, all right? That's all I'm going to say. Uncle Terry would probably take him under his wing, and Danny Dyer would go, actually, this is a proper hard man. I'm going to leg it out of here. Because I like the hard men who get an Uber home to their flat in Hampstead after work. That's the sort of hard men on actors, in other words. Thanks to everyone who's now joined the Price of Football Club. If you'd like to join the club too and get ad-free listening and invite to our monthly Q&A sessions, bonus episodes, early access to interviews and more, then go to our website, priceoffootball.com. If you have a question you'd like answered on our weekly questions pod, then email us at questions@priceoffootball.com. Don't forget you can follow us on Twitter, X, and you can find us on YouTube. And if you'd like to buy one of our excellent books, it's back, or even a Price of Football t-shirt, you can find all the details on our website, priceoffootball.com. And we'll be back on Thursday with our news pod, which will include an in-depth look from Kieran at the implications of Liberation Day and the US tariffs on world football. And again, it's a terrible thing when we only view the world through the prism of football, but it's not something that was mentioned much in the media, and it is something that's it's going to have ramifications. I mean, that's going to be a really interesting World Cup next season, isn't it, Kieran? In Mexico, USA, and Canada's border patrol is going to be hilarious. So in the meantime, I shall hand you over to Mr. Kieran Maguire for his customary farewell.
Well, thank you for everyone. Thank you to all the Crystal Palace fans who were concerned about my welfare and hope that I got home okay on Saturday. What I didn't put into the public domain was that I caught the wrong train and ended up in Littlehampton in West Sussex as opposed to Lewis in East Sussex. So that sort of added to my general miserable demeanour of that.
We've all been at East Croydon Station, Kieran, with tears in our eyes, not being able to read the right train board. I think I replied to you in a very lovely way on WhatsApp.
You did,
really.
You did.
I may not have meant it, but I think it was along the lines of it doesn't matter what size your Hampton is, wasn't it? I mean, that was the level of the genuine level of concern that any Palace fan would have shown about 9:30 on Saturday night to anyone with any issue in the world.
Thank you to all the support for the show and for all our great club members who came on the live show last week. The live Zoom show. There's other ways that you can support the show, and one of those is to give us a review, to pop along to your podcast app and just say what you think. You could even say you would rather have the show presented by Donny Tourette of Towers of London and Stephen Fry. And I just got no idea how that would end or start.
I don't know. There may be Donny Tourette fans listening, Kieran. I wouldn't want to shatter their illusions about Donny the twat Tourette. I know how it started and end. Stephen Fry, I think, would both physically and verbally out to Donny. I've never met a man, Donny Tourette, when he did basketball, trying to start a fight, and every single fight he tried to start, he would have lost. It was we've just been talking about Danny Dyer. Oh my God, Donny Tourette is you may be a Donny Tourette's family may be listening to this, in which case good luck to him and the remaining members of the Towers of London, who I imagine, even as we speak, are doing some kind of holiday camp tour of fake punk bands that didn't quite make it. Bye everybody.
Bye.
The Price of Football. The Price of Football.
This is Ali Maxwell from Not the Top 20 podcast, the number one EFL podcast covering the Championship, League One and League Two. Every Monday, our show is teeming with talking points and surprise results. These leagues and the characters within them are unpredictable and constantly entertaining in their nature. And we never have to speak about VAR. Subscribe to Not the Top 20 podcast on your preferred podcast platform and dive into the best, most in-depth EFL analysis around.